So my wife framed the map. It has absolutely nothing to do with the show. She just decided she wanted it to be framed. Friends is not a nostalgic thing for me. I didn't see a full episode until I was 20, I don't think, and it had been off the air for 4 years, I believe. Then I didn't see the whole series for another 2 years after that when I binged the whole thing for one reason and one reason only. A girl that I liked really loved the show, and I wanted to be familiar with something that was important to her. We have 3 kids now, and we'll be married for 10 years in September.
It worked!
That being said, it is a really good show with some great characters that are kept pretty consistent throughout the entire series. After season 2, at least. There are some kind of weird inconsistencies in the show that I might have to make a whole video about one day, but it is not today. Today, we're being positive. As somebody who made an 88-part video series where I just looked at wiki articles of movies that came out that year and read them out loud, I recently looked up the 10 highest rated Friends episodes on IMDb. Don't ask me why, I don't know. Number 10, the one with Chandler and Monica's wedding, part 2. I mean, Chandler and Monica get married and you find out that Rachel's pregnant. That's a pretty big deal episode. Number 9, the one with Ross's wedding, part 2. This is when Ross says Rachel instead of Emily, which is one of the most important narrative moments in the entire show. I actually considered saying Rachel at my own wedding because I knew it would make my wife laugh. On top of that, it's also the morning after for Chandler and Monica hooking up, which is also a really big deal for the series. Number 8, the one where Ross got high. This is the iconic truffle mix-up episode. Some of the best scenes in the whole series are when everyone gets super frustrated and they all just start yelling at each other at once, and this episode contains probably the best version of that in the whole show. Number 7, the one with the videotape. Ross and Rachel argue about who initiated the conception of Emma. Fortunately, it was recorded accidentally. Number 6, the one with the proposal. Chandler and Monica get engaged. It's one of the biggest moments in the entire series. I have to say at this point that there is a chance that the Friends' iconic episode naming method may have been stolen. There's a Far Side collection, I don't really remember which one, but the final joke in it is that there's a glossary at the back, and every single letter precedes a blank spot until you get to T, and then it is nothing but the one about, the one about, the one about over and over and over again. I'm not saying that whoever did the Friends naming knew about that. I'm just saying that the Far Side did it first. Number 5, the one with the rumor. Brad Pitt guest stars, and the hilarity of having Jennifer Aniston's husband at the time play a character who absolutely hates her is a great comedic idea. Also, having an actor of Brad Pitt's stature for a one-off was a pretty big deal at the time. I don't think he's that great in it because Brad Pitt is definitely not a stage actor. He is a film actor, and you have to be good at stage acting in order to be on a multi-camera sitcom. But the episode is really funny. Number 4, the one with the prom video. Ross and Rachel start dating. Also, this episode has the iconic "He's her lobster" line, and it's the first time that we see fat Monica. Number 3, the one with the embryos. This is the one when the guys win the girls' apartment. It is a highlight episode filled with iconic moments, and it could be considered the point where the show became great. Number 2, the last one. Friends has one of the great sitcom endings, and when something has a good ending, that ending tends to stick with you. Number 1, the one where everyone finds out. That's the highest rated episode? Huh. I mean, it's definitely one of the funniest episodes with Chandler and Phoebe trying to fake seduce each other, and the episode where Chandler and Monica officially started dating, which is probably the biggest turning point in the entire series. Well, I guess I can see that. So other than which one is number 1, there really aren't any surprises about which episodes are included inside of that list. It's full of big deal, heavily referenced, or notably funny episodes. Except one. The one with the videotape feels like an odd one out on that list. There are no big moments in it. We already knew that Rachel was pregnant, and we already knew that Ross was the father. The only big narrative thing that happens is we find out who initiated the conception. And that's not really that big of a deal. It's never brought up again after this episode. It doesn't have any iconic quotes or moments. It might be the first time that we hear about Regina Phalange, but that's really not enough to make an episode be the number 7 rated of all time. And no, Phoebe calls herself that before this during the whole hand twins fiasco. I'm not really sure when the first time we hear that name is. Then, as a whole, it's not really that funny of an episode, but people clearly love it. Why? Well, I have a theory, and I think that it's because, from the perspective of pure craftsmanship, it's one of the greatest sitcom episodes ever written, that I've seen at least. Now, I don't think that this is bias talking. My favorite sitcom episode ever is How I Met Your Mother's Season 1, Episode 13. I think that objectively the funniest sitcom episode ever was Season 4, Episode 14 of Frasier. Heck, even my favorite sitcom ever is Titus. I will have to make a video about that show because it does not deserve to be forgotten, In fact, it needs to be remastered, and I really wish that would happen. So if it's not the funniest or my favorite, why do I think that it's one of the absolute best ever? Well, it's because, in my opinion, I think that when you're writing a sitcom episode, there is a goal that you should always have in mind, and this episode achieves that goal in spades. As an example of that goal, one of the best stand-up jokes ever came from the late Norm Macdonald. He introduces the subject by saying that murders are always found inside of shallow graves. And then he asks the question, why is it that these murderers who go into so much planning to get away with their crime then just completely screw up the ending, the disposal of the body? He then says, now if I were to ever become a serial killer, and you expect the simple punchline of, I'd dig a decent grave. But he doesn't say that. Instead, he goes into this elaborate and occasionally uncomfortable level of detail about what he'd do if he were to kill somebody that goes on for over 5 minutes until you have completely forgotten what the initial topic is. And then finally, he gets to the end, and the punchline is, and then I'd bury her in a very, very, very deep grave. And that's the end, and it's such a good punchline, and it hits so much harder because of all of the build-up to it. In my opinion, that is the sitcom ideal. There should be a punchline or a moment that the whole episode is building toward. The blow-ups, like the one inside the one where Ross got high, that was hard to say, kind of achieved this, but that's not really a setup. It's a build-up to an explosion. The moment comes from everyone hitting their breaking point, not from a joke happening. This is common in more focused sitcoms like, say, The Bob Newhart Show, where there's really only one main character. In a show like Friends, it's more difficult to pull off because you have multiple main characters and multiple character arcs that are all kind of weaving in and out of each other, and getting them all to land on the same moment is really difficult. It's so difficult that instead, the way it usually works is all of the story arcs kind of hit their own punchlines, and they don't really have anything to do with each other. Most Friends episodes follow a fairly simple formula. You have a primary story that's introduced at the beginning that involves 1 to 3 characters. Then we're introduced to the secondary storyline that also involves 1 to 3 characters. Then there's 1 to 2 characters that are kind of floating between those 2 storylines, and occasionally you get a third storyline. So to illustrate this formula, I had my wife choose a random season and a random episode number. She chose season 3, episode 14, and that led me to the one with Phoebe's ex-partner. Scene 1, we see Tommy Pickles playing a song at Central Perk. Yeah, did you know that? She's also Phoebe's singing voice when Phoebe gets a record contract to sing Smelly Cat, and she's the lead singer of the band in Better Off Dead, and that will have a video made about it eventually. And we learn that she and Phoebe used to sing together. This is the A story involving Phoebe. Scene 2, Chandler meets a cute girl named Ginger. This is our B story. Scene 3, Joey used to date Ginger and he's avoiding you. So that's Joey and Chandler inside of the B story. Scene 4, Rachel's coworker Mark is leaving for a better job. For those that forgot, Ross was terribly jealous of Mark. This is now a C story with Ross and Rachel. Scene 5A, the A story. Leslie, the song partner, is trying to get Phoebe to write songs with her again. Phoebe doesn't want to, and she talks to Monica about it. Monica's the floater inside of this particular episode. Scene 5B, the B story. Joey tells Monica and Phoebe the story about how he and Ginger broke up. They were in a cabin, and he accidentally threw her fake leg into the fire thinking that it was a log, and then he ran away, leaving her in embarrassment. Scene 6, the B story. Chandler is on a date with Ginger, and he finds out about her fake leg. Scene 7, the C story. Ross and Rachel are having a discussion about her going to a lecture with Mark. Ross is kind of a jerk about it. This was the beginning of the end of their relationship, after all. So to keep her from being solo with Mark, he volunteers to go to the lecture with her. Scene 8, the A story. Phoebe does want to get back with Leslie, and she talks to Monica about it. Scene 9, a continuation of the A story. Phoebe goes back to Leslie to reconcile. Scene 10, the C story. Ross is at the lecture with Rachel, and he is being a huge distraction while he is bored out of his mind. Scene 11, the A story. Phoebe shares Smelly Cat with Leslie, and this might actually be the last time that we hear the song inside of the show now that I think about it. Anyway, Leslie says that it would make a great song for like a kitty litter jingle or something. Scene 12, the C story. Ross falls asleep in the lecture. Scene 13, the B story. Chandler's having trouble getting over the missing leg. Chandler knows what Joey did to the missing leg. Monica is also in the scene like the floater that she is. Scene 14, the C story. There are a lot of scenes in this 24-minute episode. Ross and Rachel are arguing because Ross fell asleep in the lecture. Ross admits that he's feeling distant from Rachel and he's just not handling it gracefully. It's a very well-written scene. Scene 15, the B story. Chandler's in with Ginger as opposed to being out with Ginger. They're making out as opposed to making in, and she discovers his third nipple, and it freaks her out and she leaves. Scene 16, the A story. Leslie tells Phoebe that she pitched Smelly Cat to a kitty litter company and they loved it for a commercial. Phoebe is mad about that and tells Leslie that she needs to choose between her and the song. Scene 17, the A story. Leslie chose the song. Monica and Joey are both here, so maybe there's an argument to be made that Joey is a floater in this episode as well. Not sure. Phoebe is mad. Scene 18, the B story. Chandler has his third nipple removed and doesn't make an obvious joke and is concerned that maybe his third nipple gave him his ability to tell jokes. He may or may not be kidding. I swear I wrote my Friends formula before going through that episode, and it really just matches up that well. Also, my wife falls asleep to Friends, so I have literally seen every episode more than 10 times. And she doesn't pick specific episodes, no. She just goes through the entire series in order. Anyway, this all brings me to the best episode. The ideal, as it were. Season 8, Episode 4, the one with the videotape. Scene 1, Monica and Chandler get back from the honeymoon. They're greeted by Phoebe and Joey, and they get jealous of a couple that the newlyweds met on the airplane. Scene 2, Ross and Rachel greet them, and everyone asks how Rachel got pregnant. I mean, they know how, but, details. During the debriefing, a disagreement comes up over who initiated the coupling. It escalates until Ross reveals that he filmed it. Rachel is understandably mad. This is the A story. Scene 3A. Chandler and Monica call the couple to discover that they were given the wrong number. Phoebe and Joey, the floaters in this episode, find this hilarious and think that they gave them a fake number, not just a wrong one. Scene 3B, the A story. Ross tells everyone how the filming happened. Scene 3C? 4? It's a flashback. A story / I guess you could say C story. Ross comes to Joey for help with seducing women because he's had a dry patch recently. He has a date coming up that night and he wants it to go well. Joey tells him that he has come up with a story that works crazy well as a seduction technique. So scene 5, C story. Ross tries telling the story on his date and it doesn't go well. Scene 6, still the C story. Ross complains to Joey about the story not going well. Joey says it's probably just the way that he told it and suggests that Rob film himself telling it and then rewatching it to try to figure out the best way to do it. While Ross is practicing, Rachel comes in and he forgets to stop the tape and accidentally films them canoodling. Scene 7, the A story. Everyone asks to see the tape. Ross says no. Scene 8A, the B story. Monica is upset about the fake numbers. Joey suggests that maybe it wasn't just fake numbers. Maybe their names were fake too, so they can't even look them up. Monica doesn't believe that that's a thing, and then Joey and Phoebe reveal their fake names, Ken Adams and Regina Phalange. Scene 8B, back to the A story. Ross gives Rachel the tape to destroy. Rachel is about to, but everyone tells her not to because they want to see who started the seduction. Ross encourages the destruction, but Rachel thinks that that means that he knows that he tried to seduce her, so she wants to show it to everybody. So they watch the tape. Funny things happen during the filming. Ross and Rachel have a moment, but then it happens. Rachel gives the beginning of Joey's seduction story, and now everyone knows that she started it. She can't believe everyone knows the story because she heard it from a friend who heard it from a Mr. Ken Adams. There's only 3 minutes left in the episode at this point, but they're not important. The end of 8B is a full minute of punchlines that were all set up before the last commercial break. Not only had the entire A story been building up to the moment when Rachel comes on to Ross, but the whole C story sets up the moment when Rachel asks Ross if she ever told him about the time that she went backpacking through Western Europe. Not only that, but you realize that the whole B story has been building up to the moment when she said that the story came from Ken Adams. Everything in the entire episode comes together in that 1 minute, and all 3 storylines collide in 2 lines that would not be funny otherwise. Did I ever tell you about the time that I went backpacking through Western Europe? Isn't funny. Ken Adams isn't funny, but the setup of the entire episode not only makes them funny, but they hit really hard. And the setup is so important that these are not quotable things. You have to know the whole joke in order for it to be funny. So what is my point in this long-winded discussion? One thing that I love doing is helping people better appreciate the things that they already love. Sometimes you know that you love something, but you can't really put your finger on it. But then once you figure it out, or once somebody explains to you why it's good, you actually like it even more. I feel that way every time somebody explains a classical music piece to me. And the more insight that I get on the movie Inside Out, the more I love it. And I think that unlike the rest of the top 10, this is an episode that is much harder to put your finger on why it sticks with you. And I further think that the episode is so well written that people notice that there's something special about it, whether they know why or not. And if you were one of those, then I hope that this explained it to you and it made you love it even more. If you do something great, people notice it whether they appreciate it or not. If you subscribe, you'll see me next time. Bye.